Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Utopian Hub, where we look at scholarly works in utopian studies and discuss them with non-experts. I'm Donald Zarate, a first-year graduate student at the University of California, Riverside in the Political Science Department, and this video revolves around the book Facial Justice by L.P. Hartley. I'm joined here by Jessica
Maccaro.
Maccaro,
Not the only one.
a fourth-year graduate student in the Entomology department
Mhm.
at my university. Jess's research includes symbiosis spanning from pathogenic to mutualistic relationships. So now we go to the hospital. Since Jail's bus met with the director's accident, Jail and her bus riders got sent to the hospital and actually had to stay there for a month or two. While there, the dictator suspended all excursions for safety reasons. While waiting in the hospital, no one would let her see her own face, and everyone started preparing for a special visitor. While in the hospital, everybody's issued a single flower, and that flower is designed after a cineraria. And I say issued because it's not an actual flower, it's a plastic version, and everyone's given the exact same one. Why would a society that's never seen flowers deliberately issue a flower to everyone? And of all the flowers, why a cineraria?
Yeah. So I guess this specific flower is kind of like a hybrid between two flowers. It's not native to the area. Some context you gave me before. And I guess like what comes to mind immediately for me is that like this flower represents something that isn't real. It's like it's beautiful, but it's not real. It's like a hyper reality or a simulacrum, almost like in the
What is
Baudrillard.
that word?
So a simulacrum is a copy of a copy in which there's no original form.
Okay.
So yeah, like that. So it's kind of just like an ideal, right? That's like not really attainable, because again, it maybe the flower is this ideal of beauty. I know that there's another quote in the book that talks about like the flowers not needing these plastic flowers not needing anything, being completely self-sustaining. And so it's like this ideal again of like being a self-sustained individual thing and beautiful in your self-sustainingness. But I think that that is like an ideal that is fake, right? And so
Especially since everyone is given the same one. And one of the
yeah.
things that like just humans tend to attach to beauty is the fact that it's special.
Yeah, that's
And so
interesting.
since everyone is given these supposedly beautiful things that are one fake but also identical to everyone else's, you're kind of subtracting from that beauty.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Thinking about beauty as being special and how like also like I guess going back to the casts and stuff and how like
Jail has to remove her face for being beautiful.
yeah, because she's too
Fa-
unique.
Facially privileged.
Right? Yeah.
Which, by the way,
Yeah.
I'm gonna start using that phrase for beautiful
Facially
people.
privileged. Yes, you should. It is a privilege. And like, yeah, I guess that's the thing is like in both cases like you I guess it's not beautiful when everything is the same. I never thought about beauty as as uniqueness like that. So
Okay.
so in this way, yeah, it's like taking beauty out of the world to try to have equality in this
Huh.
book, right?
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. All right. Next question. What do you make of the fact that mirrors are uncommon in this kind of society? So, Jail, like I said, nobody will let her see her face. And even when she goes to the restroom, she can't because there's no mirrors there. Note they're not illegal, they're just really uncommon.
Yeah, like when I think about mirrors, I think about self-reflection. I guess it's obviously it literally is reflecting the self, but in a proverbial sense as well, right? Like, we're just going about doing whatever we do in autopilot, especially in the society where there's like pretty well established norms. And then the mirror is put up. It makes you like look and reflect on what you're doing like automatically and have to like ask yourself, I guess, like do I want to be doing this? It makes you have to think like as an individual, right? Like you can't just keep being in autopilot. Weirdly, I've been thinking about mirrors a lot, and like I see like a lot of mirrors. Just like when I remember when I was traveling in Paris, for example, there's just mirrors everywhere in places where I was like, why like just walking down the streets there'd be mirrors and I was like why is there so many mirrors.
So, a lot of societies attribute mirrors to being one way to look at the soul.
Oh,
And that they
interesting.
actually, when people die, they actually get trapped in mirrors.
Oh, so to look at the soul. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, so it's this sense of identity, I guess.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You can see your face.
Yeah, yeah. Like I guess like I've also been thinking about mirrors as this sort of like as like something that is just the an appearance but without substance. Like I guess,
It
it's
is
just a
it is flat.
reflection. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it is literally two-dimensional.
Yeah. Yeah, I've just been I'm making this little like movie right now, and maybe this is honestly too much of a tangent. Maybe I won't go into it. But mirrors are really important in the movie. And also like one of my friends who studies anarchism was saying that like one of the social movements for one of these groups of anarchists was to go and put mirrors everywhere so that people would constantly just be
Ah.
doing their thing in autopilot, and then a mirror would flash up, and then they'd have to be like, wait, why am I doing this? Like, so it was kind of like a constant like
Huh.
reflection of like, why are you doing this? It puts you into like this like, I guess in this same sense of being transcendent, going above or outside, it puts you outside of yourself to look at yourself. That's what mirrors are doing, I think.
Now we get to meet the old woman. When the old woman comes, she spends a few minutes with each patient, leaving nothing but smiles and high spirits. When she met with Jail, however, things were very tense. In short, Jail was afraid of getting into trouble. Instead, the old woman comforted her and assured her that everything would be all right. They do, however, go on an extended discussion about imagination, property, and identity.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, she says imagination is the cause of the world's suffering, just like property and personal identity. These seem to be the general attitudes in society as expressed by the dictator. So, given that dystopias and utopias are fundamentally imaginative, what do you think of the author is trying to convey by disparaging imagination?
Yeah, I mean, I think imagination has always been sort of a source of social change, and so I think by disparaging imagination, it's a way of trying to keep a society static, um, and like I guess appreciating what is what I guess what there is another quote in the book that just talks about like you can only love like what is and appreciate what is, and you shouldn't be looking to what isn't. And I don't know, even
Mm.
in my personal life, I grapple with that because like in some senses it's like I want to just appreciate things as they are, but also there is an importance in like being imaginative and going towards something else as well. And so yeah, you don't want to be complacent, right? You don't want to stay the same. And so imagination is essential in figuring out your direction towards change.
As far as the utopian literature goes, that is like on point. The one of the core features of utopianism is that it brings about social transformation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm like thinking about this like in a biological sense too because in imagination is something that we think makes us uniquely human. Like other animals don't have imagination, but they still, well, and that could be debated, but they still have change, right? Like
Well,
evolution still happens.
isn't nature like I recall some kind of quote saying something like nature is the best is the nature is the most creative or something like that.
Yeah, right. So that's what I've been thinking about is like what is imagination in nature? And I think for me it's like, when I think about evolution, you have to have like variation, you have to have a lot of like options to select on, otherwise like nothing changes. So like let's say like in a, as an example, like I have blue eyes, you have brown eyes. Like maybe there's some reason that blue eyes or brown eyes are better, and there has to be this like variation at all to select for a society that has all brown eyes or to like move towards like some optimal society, right? But like that just can't happen if there isn't variation. So I think that like imagination in this like in this evolutionary sense is having variation, having sources of novelty. And that's a whole nother thing we can talk about if you want, of like where do you get novelty in evolution in the genome? Like how do you get new genes? So, you've probably heard of the term mutation. So, a mutation is a source of novelty. You have a gene and then it's like gets mutated, so it changes the gene. But that's only one source of novelty. Sometimes genes will get duplicated. So, like, yeah, I have a gene for maybe like digesting tea, and then that gene gets duplicated. so that now I
You
have
can
an
have
extra
twice
copy.
the tea.
Yeah, I can either be twice as good at digesting tea, or now that new gene can develop a new function. And so that's what's cool, is like I can still have the same one doing the tea thing, but then this one can mutate and not affect and not cause any problems. Because if you don't duplicate, a mutation will oftentimes cause problems in genes you already have. So I guess to bring that back to society, maybe you could do that for me. Like,
I mean, a lot of societies already have built-in mechanisms, what you might call genes, where they have a sense of redundancy, where there are multiple, not trying to get at checks and balances, but they have checks and balances on each other to fulfill similar, if not identical, functions.
yeah.
What I find interesting about that in the book sense is that their society has that. Like, Jail herself is kind of a mutation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? And like the role of mutation is like imagination. Like mutation is something that changes the course of evolution of a society or of a species, right? So I think it's super important. The last source of change that I'll just mention is my favorite is symbiogenesis, is things coming together to create something new. And so, yeah, I think that's really fun. Like thinking about the mitochondria, like we were talking about the other day, like the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of our cell, it used to be two different organisms that came together and then created a new thing. And then that new thing could be selected on. So yeah, a lot of times like novelty just comes from things coming together. So
Community.
I guess, yeah, community and like synergies that arise from those things coming together long enough. And whatever, like that can now be selected on this.
I mean, what's interesting about that is that is like, that necessitates dependence.
Yes.
Which is what this society is trying to go against.
Yes, exactly. Like, and that's something I've always had beef with in my field, is that like, yeah, we even in symbiosis research, which literally is about things being together, people think it's paradoxical that like a parasite would rely on a host, or that a mutualist would rely on, another organism. Like they're like, it's like a problem that needs to be solved, but really I think it should be like the default, that things are dependent.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, like bringing you back to the flower that doesn't need any like soil or sun or anything. Like it actually isn't a flower anymore, right? Like its essence is completely like uprooted, like don't mind the fun. And so yeah, it's just it literally isn't itself without its dependencies. So yeah, I think it's important to always like define things by their dependencies, because it's just unrealistic to think that we can transcend those.